All right, you guys. So, welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I'm super excited that you guys decided to join me tonight. So sorry for the technical difficulties that we was experiencing earlier. So we are going to get started. So tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you guys how to build wealth the right way utilizing a trust entity, you guys, okay? So I'm super excited about this topic because a lot of us, we are focused on generational wealth. We want to build generational wealth the right way for our children. And so in order for us to be able to do that, we need to know how to actually preserve the wealth and how to actually transfer the wealth, right? So I am gonna let me mute everyone here. All right, so I muted everyone. So what I want is for us to be highly engaged. So if you guys could come on camera, I would really appreciate that. If you could come on camera, and then I'm going to do a short little presentation for you guys. I have some slides here where I want to teach you guys about what a trust entity is, and then after that, we're going to open up the floor for Q&A, okay? So we're about to get started right now. So what I'm going to tell you guys is who I am, right? So some of you guys might have seen me on YouTube, Instagram. So I am Christina Yvette. I am a trust strategist, you guys. I have been a trust strategist or a trustee per se for since 2015. So that's almost 10 years, you guys. And the way that I became a trustee was by way of real estate. So I was actually a full-time nurse. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was working 5 days, sometimes even 6 days, 12-hour shifts. And at that time, I had a 1-year-old baby. And so I realized that I was actually spending more time with my coworkers than at home with my 1-year-old baby. So my baby, he was actually being raised by my parents, right? So my mom and dad was watching him while I was, hustling doing these 12-hour shifts. So I knew that in order for me to not have to work as hard, I needed a second stream of income. And what I ended up doing was I ended up going to a seminar where they started teaching how to flip houses. I signed up for mentorship, and probably 6 months after that seminar, I actually bought my first property. And my mentor told me, put that property into a trust. And I was like, well, why? And it's because one, is going to protect the property, and two, anything could happen. Because when you flipping houses, like you're doing renovations, right? So you could be knocking down walls, you messing with electrical. And so if somebody gets injured, they sue you, they could take the house. So I didn't want that to happen. I was young. I was 25 years old. I was a woman in a, male dominated industry. And so I didn't want to be put in that vulnerable position to where I could actually lose my property. So what I did was I actually put that property into a trust, and I've been a trustee ever since. So that's why I empower you guys to become trustees, because you want to protect your assets. A lot of us, we have the assets, we've acquired the assets, but we never, ask ourselves, how is this house going to be transferred from my name to my child's name if I don't wake up tomorrow? And so that's the question that you want to ask yourself, right? How is this house going to be transferred, right? All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to dive into this short presentation, okay? All right, let's see here. Boom, there we go. And so I'm going to go through these slides, and then after that, what I'm going to do is you want to stay till the end, because I'm going to show you what a trust looks like, okay? Because a lot of us, we don't know what a trust looks like. So a trust is actually a contract, you guys. A trust is a contract. It is an entity. And it's a living, breathing entity just like you and just like me, okay? And so a trust can do anything that you can do. So if you are able to, buy a house, a trust could buy a house. If you're able to build credit, a trust could also build credit. So with that being said, it is an entity and it's a contract. So as a private contract, there are several different parts in this contract. So what are the different parts? One, there's a declaration. So in that declaration, you're declaring what it is and you're declaring what it is not, okay? So you're declaring that it is a trust, and then you're declaring that it's not a company, it's not a corporation, it's not any other thing, okay? So there are several different parties in this contract, okay? So let's go through some of them. So hold on, let's see, let's get back here. Okay, so the different parties, you got the grantor. So the grantor is the creator of the trust. Another name for grantor we hear is settlor and trustor. So that's the person who established a trust for somebody else. Who is that somebody else? The beneficiaries, okay? Then the second party is the trustee. So the trustee actually controls the assets and runs the trust on a day-to-day basis. So they're the controller of the trust. Then you have the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are the inheritors of the trust, you guys. So they're the person who is supposed to be one receiving distributions. So they're benefiting from the trust while they're living. And if the trust is going to expire, then all those assets are going to be transferred to the beneficiaries, okay? So these are the different parties involved in the actual trust, okay? So there are several different types of trust. I'm going to break down a few of them for you guys. But you see here on the screen, we have irrevocable, land, living, revocable, charitable, testamentary, right? So with the different types of trust, there's several categories. And so all of these trusts are going to fall within these categories. So the first one is express versus implied. So with an express trust, it's a written trust, and an implied trust is an oral trust. So out of these two categories, you definitely want a written trust because it's going to hold up in court. Next, you have discretionary versus non-discretionary. So discretionary means that you have discretionary power to be able to make decisions for the trust that's actually not inside of the contract. Non-discretionary means that if it's not inside of the trust, you cannot make those decisions, or the trust cannot do anything outside of what's in the actual contract, okay? Then you have statutory versus non-statutory. So with a statutory trust, you have all of the state codes and statutes inside of that trust, okay? So that means that the state regulates the trust, and that means that you can only use that trust in that state. So if you have a trust that was established in Georgia, you can only use it in Georgia, right? For a statutory trust. With that type of trust, usually is registered with the state, which means that it's public, okay? So the other type of trust is a non-statutory trust. With a non-statutory trust, that means that it doesn't have the state statutes or codes inside of it, okay? Which is good for you because you're not restricted to that one state. So even if you established a non-statutory trust in Georgia, you could use it in California, Florida, Nevada, and any of these other states and the U.S. territories, okay? So that is a good thing. So it's not regulated or restricted. So that state actually doesn't have any jurisdiction over the non-statutory trust, okay? So the next category I want to tell you guys about is revocable versus irrevocable. So every single type of trust is going to fall within these two categories. So with a revocable trust, we are only referring to the grantor for these two types of trust, okay? So with a revocable trust, the grantor can actually make changes to the trust. They can actually remove the trustees and beneficiaries after they've been, appointed. They can actually make changes or amendments. And if they were to put property into the trust, they can take the property out. And if they wanted to terminate the trust, they could also terminate the trust. So because the grantor is able to make all of these changes during their lifetime, it's actually your assets are not fully protected, okay? Because any of the creditors from either the grantor or the trustee can actually come after the trust, okay? So that's not a good thing. And then if that trust was sued, the actual judge can decide to pierce through that trust, make you produce the trust in court, bring it to court, and then at that point in time, then the trust will become public because all court cases are public, okay? So you don't want that to happen. So the other type of trust is an irrevocable trust, okay? So with an irrevocable trust, the grantor cannot make any changes or amendments to the actual trust contract. If they appointed a trustee or beneficiaries, they cannot remove them. If they wanted to terminate the trust today or tomorrow, they cannot do that. And if they was to put property into the trust, they cannot take it back. So because the grantor has no power, no control, and no beneficial interest in the trust, it's actually seen as a bulletproof trust because your assets are going to be fully protected because the grantor can't make any changes, okay? And if that type of trust was to end up in court, the judge would decide not to pierce through that type of trust. So that is the type of trust that you really want, an irrevocable trust, because that's what's going to fully protect your assets, okay? So with that being said, this is how you're actually going to create a trust. Step one is you're going to determine the type of trust that you're going to create, right? So I just gave you a list of different types of categories, right? So first is express versus implied. So you definitely want an express trust. You want a discretionary trust so that you can, make decisions. You want a non-statutory trust so you can use it in the entire nation. And then you want an irrevocable trust so that you're able to fully protect your assets, okay? So step two is you're going to determine the name of the trust, okay? So with this particular step, what you want to do is when you're naming the trust, you do not want to name the trust after yourself, okay? Because we're using the trust, one, for protection, right? To protect our assets. So we don't want to be associated with those assets. And then two, for privacy, right? So do not name the trust after yourself. If your name is John Doe, do not name the trust John Doe, okay? Another thing is that the word trust does not need to be in the name of the trust. So the trust is an entity, but you do not have to have the word trust in the name of the trust, okay? Okay. So next is you're going to appoint the different parties involved. Who? You're going to appoint a grantor, because if you are creating an irrevocable trust, you do not want to be the grantor of your trust. Why? Because the grantor has no power, no control, okay? So you're going to appoint someone else to be the grantor, which is the creator on paper, and then you're going to appoint yourself to be the trustee. Why? Because the trustee has all the power, all the control, and runs the trust on a day-to-day basis. So you want to be the trustee, and then you're going to appoint someone else to be the grantor. That someone else can be a sibling, it could be a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a coworker, someone who's able to actually notarize the trust with you in that position, okay? And you don't have to worry about who you're going to appoint because that person literally is going to notarize the trust and walks away, okay? They have no power, control, and they cannot benefit from the trust legally, okay? So now that you have appointed someone to be your grantor, you're going to appoint yourself to be the trustee, and then you're going to appoint your beneficiaries. So all of these positions can be either entities, so they can be other trusts or corporations or companies, and they can also be natural persons, which is me, you, your siblings, and your children, okay? So for the beneficiaries, you're going to appoint your children, or you're going to appoint another trust, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then lastly is the successor trustee, okay? So the successor trustee is the individual who's going to take over after you. You're the trustee. You're running the trust on a day-to-day basis. If anything were to happen to you, meaning that you became incapacitated, that you resigned, or that you expired, then someone is going to have to pick up where you left off, because a trust is actually designed to outlive you. But you need to make sure that you have someone that you can pass the baton to. That is the successor, okay? So you need to choose your successor. That person needs to be qualified, 18 and older, and actually wanting to operate a trust. Step three, we're going to actually create the trust agreement. So like I told you at the beginning, the trust is a contract. So we're going to customize this contract for our family, for our business. We're going to make sure that it fits our organization, okay? And I'll show you what that looks like towards the end of this call. Step 4 is you're going to notarize the trust, right? So the trust, in order for it to be legal and for you to start operating it, you have to notarize it. It needs to be notarized by 2 individuals, by the grantor and by the trustee. That's what makes it legal. Once the trust is legal, you're able to start using it. So what is the first thing that you want to do? The first thing that you want to do is you want to open up a trust fund, right? So that's the bank account that's going to be associated with the trust. This bank account is where you're going to put all the trust funds, okay? So it could be a checking account, a savings account, a money market account, a cash management account, okay? So you can go to a credit union, a bank, of any kind of financial institution that offers trust accounts, okay? You're going to provide them with 2 pieces of documents. You're going to provide them with your EIN letter that you're going to get from the IRS, and you're going to provide them with the certificate of trust. The certificate of trust is proof of identity that the trust actually exists, okay? So it's kind of like an ID or a driver's license or something, because this trust, even though it's seen as a living, breathing entity, it can't run itself. It needs you, the trustee, in order to run the trust, okay? So that's why you're going to provide them with the certificate of trust. And then once you open up that bank account, what you want to do next is you want to start transferring assets into the trust. That is the most important thing, for you to actually protect your assets by transferring them into the name of the trust. So now that house that you have, the car that you have, the bank account with 6 figures, all of that stuff, the stocks, the bonds, the crypto, jewelry, furniture, whatever assets that you want, you're going to put it inside of the trust. And now the trust is going to be the new owner, right? So for example, let's just say that you have a primary residence, right? A house. And this house is in your name, right? A lot of us, we don't know that it's a part of the public records. So somebody can literally go to the public records, they can search your name, and then your address pops up. Or they can put your address and then the name of the owner pops up. So you don't want that to happen to where it's is visible for everyone to know that you are the owner, okay? So what you want to do is you want to remove yourself as the owner. So you're going to quit claim that property from your personal name into the name of the trust. And now the trust is going to be the owner of that property, okay? So it's going to be fully protected if you guys have an irrevocable trust, okay? So these are the things that can actually protect you, that a trust can protect you from. It can protect you from foreclosure, from divorce, from bankruptcy, from heavy taxations, lawsuits, probate, and much more. So I'm just going to touch on a few. So one, let's talk about divorce, right? Because divorce is a transfer of wealth, right? A lot of us, we don't think about that. We don't know that, but it is. It's a transfer of wealth. And so usually out of the 2 spouses, one person ends up with everything or half or majority, okay? And so you want to protect yourself from that, because with a divorce, it's a lawsuit, right, between those 2 individuals. But the thing about a divorce is that everything that's in your personal name is included in that divorce. So the house that's in your name, the car that's in your name, the 401k, or pension, all those things, it's included in the divorce. So how can a trust protect you? Well, a trust is actually a separate entity from you. So everything and anything that's inside of the name of the trust that the trust owns cannot be pulled into that divorce, right? So that is how it can actually protect you. So me personally, I have a client who, him and his wife, they were investing in real estate, and then the '08 crash happened. And so they were upside down on 2 houses. And so she prohibited him from purchasing any more pieces of real estate because of that bad experience. And so fortunately for him, he didn't listen to her. So he ended up setting up a trust. He ended up throughout the years, bought 5 investment properties, put it into the trust. 10 years later, they get a divorce, and that trust and the 5 properties plus the money that's inside of it, the rental income, is not included in the divorce. It was not included in the divorce. So that's how you want to protect yourself. Let's talk about heavy taxation, right? Because a lot of us, unfortunately, we are giving away half of our income to the IRS. So if you if you are giving away half of your income to the IRS, that means that you can't build wealth efficiently, okay? Because you do have to reduce your taxes in order to do that. So if you decide to reduce your taxes, right, and instead of giving 50% away, let's just say you're giving 10 now, then that extra 40% that you're saving in taxes, you can use that in order to invest. And now that you're investing those funds, what you're going to do is you're going to start building wealth faster, okay? So with us, right, we use a particular type of trust. It's called a tax exempt. It's a nonprofit tax exempt trust. And with this trust, what you can do is you can actually donate your gross income up to 60% of it to your own tax exempt trust, right? Your tax exempt trust is going to give you a donation receipt. And now, instead of you being taxed on 100% of your income, you're only going to be taxed on 40% of your income because you donated 60 of it to your trust, okay? So that is one strategy that you can use in order to reduce your taxes, okay? And I'll talk about that trust in just a minute. Next is lawsuits, right? And so you do not want to you don't want to wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit. Trust me, okay? So what you want to do is you want to protect yourself and your assets now. So let's just say that you have a business, right? Let's just say that you have an LLC. With this LLC, an LLC stands for limited liability company, right? And so you hear the key word, limited liability. So it doesn't say that you have no liability, and it also doesn't say that the company has full liability. So with that said, right, what can happen is if you are the owner, right, the authorized member of that LLC, if that company is sued, and if there's a judgment and that company can't fulfill the judgment, guess what's going to happen? The judge can decide to pierce through that corporate veil, right? That limited liability protection that you have. The judge can pierce through it and go after you as the owner, right? And because you're the owner, that means that they can go after you for all of your personal assets. So that means the house that you live in, they can seize it. And that means that your W-2 income or the six figures that you have in the bank, they can actually garnish those wages. You don't want that to happen. And so instead of you being the owner of that LLC, what you want to do is you want to have a trust be the owner of that LLC. Now that trust is going to be acting as a holding company, and that's going to be your first layer of protection between you and the trust, right? So now let's just say that between you and the company is going to be the trust. So let's just say that that LLC is sued, right? And instead of the judge, right, the judge is going to pierce through the corporate veil. And instead of the judge coming after you as the owner, now the judge has to come after the trust, which is the holding company, okay? And so now you're fully protected, right? Because now the trust is going to be the one that, they're going to seize the trust assets, right? And so with a holding company, it's going to be non-operational. So you're only going to have operating funds in there. You're not going to hold a bunch of assets in a holding company because of that primary purpose, okay? Let's talk about probate. Because a lot of us, and let me ask you a question, right? Let me see what's going on over here. So, my question to you is, you have a house, right? Your primary residence. How do you expect that house to be transferred from your name, right? Your name is on the deed, to your child's name, right? Your kid's name or your spouse, whoever, if you didn't wake up tomorrow, right? So somebody come off of you and give me an answer and let me know, right? So let me know. Let me see. Somebody could come off mute and tell me what they think, right? So if you didn't wake up tomorrow and you have this house that's in your personal name, how do you expect it to be transferred to your child's name? What do you think the process is? What do you think is going to happen? How is the deed going to be transferred?
Through court.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. So that means that your children are going to have to go to court, right? And so you don't want that to happen, right? You don't want that to happen to where they are, forced to go through probate. Somebody just put in the chat, right? They put probate. So you don't want that to happen. So let's talk about probate, right? Because probate is inevitable unless we have our affairs in order, right? So with that being said, when we're talking about probate, right, this is the process. So probate, we're all going to end up going through probate if we don't have our affairs in order. So what does that look like? Well, let's just say you have a will, right? A lot of us, we think that a will is good enough. A will end up in probate, okay? So that's a guarantee. And a will is just a wish list, right? You're on that will, you're just putting, hey, I wish that my son gets my house. But ultimately, it can't own anything like a trust. A trust can be the owner of your assets, of things, of possessions, okay? So with that being said, right, what's going to happen is, let's just say that you got a house, right? You got a car, you have 6 figures in the bank, right? And you got student loan debt, credit card debt, and you did not wake up tomorrow, right? And you put everything into the well. What's going to happen is the state that you live in, they are going to now issue you an estate. Okay, they're going to issue you an estate. And what's going to happen is now that estate is going to have to be represented in probate court. So you're going to have a probate attorney and it's going to be in probate court, right? And so the first thing that judge is going to do is that judge is going to pay your bills, right? Or your debt, right? And so whatever debt that you had, the student loan debt, the credit card debt, the auto loan debt, all of that is going to be taken out of your estate, right? Because all of your assets was put inside of your estate. The house, the car, the 6 figures in the bank, right? The stocks, the crypto, everything was put inside of the estate. So the judge is going to pay all the debt first, right? Then the probate attorney is going to take their fees. Then the probate court is going to take their fees. And then whatever the leftovers is what your children get, right? And so you are going to be doing your children a disservice if you allow them to go through this process. Why? Because you already knew that you wanted your children to have this inheritance, right? But you're dragging them through the probate process when they're grieving over one of the most major losses that they have experienced, which is you. So you don't want that to happen. So you want to be able to have your affairs in order and already think about transferring, right? So what you're going to do is, right, instead of that process, you're going to set up a trust, right? And then with that trust, all of your assets are going to go inside the trust. So the house that we're talking about, the car, the 6 figures in the bank, all of that is going to be in the name of the trust. And if you didn't wake up tomorrow, guess what happens? Your children get to grieve, peacefully because they don't have to go to probate because everything's going to remain in the name of the trust, right? The house, the car, the bank account. And so there's nothing that your children need to do because they're the beneficiaries, right? So your successor is just going to literally pick up where you left off. So there's nothing that needs to happen. And guess what? Your debt, that debt dies with you, because those creditors cannot come after your trust estate. So that is the process that you want to take your family through, okay? So let's talk about the wealth building formula. I have 3 pillars here. The first one is structure, the second one is credit, and the third one is invest, okay? So with structure, this is the structure that I recommend for you guys. I recommend that you have multiple trust within your structure. You do not want to put all of your eggs in one basket, which means that you don't want to put all of your assets in one trust. You need multiple trusts because they're designed for different purposes, okay? So these are the 3 trusts that I recommend. The first one is a business trust, the second one is a family trust, and the third one is a tax-exempt trust, okay? So let's talk about the business trust. The business trust, you can use that trust 2 ways, right? It's designed to operate or it's designed to manage or operate other entities, right? So you can use it in 2 ways. The first way is you can use it as a holding company, okay? So that means that if you have an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp or a nonprofit, any kind of company, you can remove yourself as the owner, and now you can put the business trust as the owner of that company. So let's just say it's an LLC, right? So now you're going to have the business trust be the authorized member of that LLC. You removed yourself, and now the business trust is going to be non-operational, right? So it doesn't offer any products or services, right? With the business trust, it's just going to only be acting as the holding company. So its sole purpose is to just own the LLC. The LLC is still going to be functioning, right? So the LLC is going to have the employees, is going to have the products, the services, the payroll, everything that's happening, right? Building the credit, all of these things, okay? So that's one way you could use the business trust. The other way is by actually operating a business, right? So let's just say you wanted to open up a restaurant or a barbershop or, a retail shop or e-commerce company. You can actually do that through a business trust. You don't have to set up an LLC or a corporation, right? Those are what we call statutory entities, which means that the state gets to regulate those entities, which means that if you don't pay your annual report, guess what? They can shut you down, right? And then you won't be able to operate, right? And so that's on the public, and with a trust, it's private, right? So you can set up your business, you can, set up your business trust. Let's just say you want to run it for 50 years, you can, right? And the state is not going to regulate it. The state is not going to be able to shut you down, right? So a business trust is actually superior to an LLC and a corporation, but those entities, because you have to go through the state, those entities are more popular, okay? That's why we only know about them, okay? So with the business trust, right? Let's just say that you are using it as a holding company, and let's just say that your LLC made $100,000, right? 6 figures. So what can happen is you can actually you can file your taxes, right, with your LLC, or you can actually do a K-1 distribution, and then you can actually distribute or send that money over the 100,000 to the business trust, right? And then once that money is in the business trust, then on the LLC side, your tax liability is zero because all of the money went to the owner, right? So now with the business trust, trusts are taxed at anywhere between 10% upwards of 39%, just depending on the income that's coming into the trust, okay? So they're kind of taxed like personal like people, okay? So with that being said, that 100,000 that came in, right? As long as you leave it inside of the trust and you don't distribute it, then it doesn't trigger a taxable event, right? And if it doesn't trigger a taxable event, then you're not required to file taxes, okay? So that's one thing. But let's just say that you want to file your taxes, right? And you do want to do a distribution. Then what can happen is with a business trust, right? It has to file a 1041. And so you're going to do your deductions, right? So whatever your operating expenses are for the business trust, you'll do your deductions. And then the remainder of it, you have to pay taxes on. One thing that I love about a trust is that you spend the money first and then you're taxed on what's left over, right? Versus us on the personal side where we are taxed first and then we spend the leftovers. So with the trust, what's going to happen is that 100,000, you are going to, do your deductions. So let's just say you got 20,000 in deductions. So now there's $80,000 that's left. So you would have to file taxes, pay taxes on that 80,000, right? Or you can distribute it to the beneficiary, and now the beneficiary has to pay taxes on the 80,000. So that money that you are, getting from the business, right? You got to spend it on your family anyways. So what you want to do is you want to have your family trust be the beneficiary of the business trust, right? So now that 80,000 is going to flow straight to the family, and now you're able to spend that money on the family, right? So now you're able to do the groceries, the mortgage, gasoline, anything that you have to do for the family. So we spend the money first and we're taxed on, the leftovers, right? So out of that 80,000, you want to expend as much as possible. So let's just say that you spent 70 of it, and now there's $10,000 that's left, right? So you would normally be taxed 10% on that 10,000, right? And what you can do is you can actually donate that to your tax exempt trust, right? And then once you donate that to your tax exempt trust, then at that level, you are done paying taxes because the tax exempt trust is exempt from federal taxes. So on the business trust side, it was a zero tax liability. On the private family side, it was a zero tax liability. And then on the tax exempt trust, you're not required to pay taxes, right? You don't have to file a 1041 with the IRS unless you are making more than $5,000 in income. So as long as you're considering that as a donation, then you don't have to report, okay? So with that being said, let's talk about that tax exempt trust, right? So with the tax exempt trust, it is designated as a 508c1a, okay? So that means that it is a mandatory exception to not having to file for a 501. So a 501 usually with nonprofits, right? A lot of people don't know that nonprofits doesn't mean that you're automatically tax exempt. You have to file a 501c3 application with the IRS in order for you to be tax exempt. But there's something called separation between church and state. I know you've heard of that. And so with that being said, there is a particular entity that's designated as a 508. And if you're running that type of entity, is a mandatory exception for you not having to file to be tax exempt, okay? So that is what we have here. And there's a lot of different terms that you can label this, right? So you can label it as tax exempt, as a nonprofit, as a 508, as a church, as a faith-based organization, as a ministry. So there's a couple different ways. Usually it can either be religious or educational. It doesn't have to be. So with that entity, like I told you guys earlier, right? You could actually save a lot on taxes because one, you automatically are exempt from federal taxes and you can qualify to be exempt from the other type of taxes, meaning state taxes, county taxes, city taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, okay? So you can qualify, you just have to apply for those exemptions, okay? So for example, with a property, right, you can actually, a 508 can get exempt from one property from those property taxes, okay? So if your property taxes are like $8,000 or something annually, just imagine you being able to apply for exemption and now you saving that $8,000. What are you going to do with that $8,000? You're going to acquire an asset, right? Or you're going to be able to multiply, you're going to be able to invest that money. So that's why reducing your taxes is extremely important, and that's how a trust can help you. So let's move on to the second pillar, you guys. So the second pillar is credit. This is the position that you're going to put yourself in where you are going to be you're going to be using OPM, okay? OPM is other people's money. So what I told you guys earlier is that a trust can actually build credit. Why? Because a trust can apply for an EIN number, and with that EIN number, you can build business credit. So it's the identical credit as an LLC and a corporation, okay? So just imagine being able to do that, because now what you're going to do is you're going to leverage a second credit profile, okay? Because you were probably only just using your personal credit, and that's fine, but now you want to tap into business credit because you can qualify for higher lines of credit with business credit, okay? So you want to be putting yourself in a position to where you're able to now build business credit with your business trust, okay? And once you're able to do that, then you can actually strip those credit cards and you can use them to invest, okay? So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing is that you have a nonprofit within your structure. So you can actually apply for nonprofit grants, and then from there, you can be able to leverage those funds as well, okay? So now let's move on to the third pillar. So with the third pillar, it's invest, right? And so these are the type of assets that I recommend that you guys acquire for your trust. Why? Because you want your trust to be able to sustain itself. You do not want to be pouring in your W-2 income into the trust, okay? So with that being said, the first one that I recommend is a cash value life insurance policy, and then the second one is real estate, okay? So let's talk about the cash value life insurance policy. So the one that I recommend is an index universal life insurance policy. You could also get a whole life too, but I'm going to talk about the IUL, okay? So a lot of people are not aware of this, but life insurance is supposed to be used when you are living, not when you're dead. right? So a lot of people, they're going to insure their life and they're going to say, oh yeah, so when I die, my kids are going to get $1 million. No, we understand that there's a death benefit, but you want to be using this life insurance in order to build wealth, right? This is what a lot of the wealthy families are doing today and have done for generations. And this is what you're about to tap into if you haven't already began, okay? So with a life insurance, right, the money that you're accumulating in your cash value is tax-free, it's liquid, and it's protected, right? So that is the type of, that's the type of tool that you want to use in order to build wealth, right? So with this policy, what's going to happen is you're going to put yourself in a position to where you're going to pay yourself first. That is so vitally important, right? Because a lot of us, we're not doing it. Let's just be honest, right? So when we get paid, right, what has already occurred? We don't even think about it because we're on autopilot. So it's Friday. I just got paid $5,000, right? And what happened was the IRS already took theirs, right? Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, they already took their cut. Your 401k contribution already went. And whatever is left over is what was deposited into your checking account. So that is that cycle that we're in. And now that we got the leftovers inside of our checking account, what is going to happen? Right? So that money just went into Wells Fargo, right? It went into Wells Fargo to do what? To make Wells Fargo rich, right? But you need to put yourself in a position to where you're going to become your own bank, okay? So instead of making Wells Fargo rich, right? That money that just came into your checking account, the first thing that you do is you pay your mortgage, your rent, groceries, taxes, car notes, gasoline, all kind of things. And then what? Whatever is left over after you're done paying all those bills is what you save, right? You just leave it inside of your checking account or you put it in a savings account, right? That is the vicious cycle that we're in. That is the rat race that we're in, right? So instead of you doing that entire process, what you want to do is you want to pay yourself first. And what does that look like? When that money comes into Wells Fargo, right? When that check is direct deposited, instead of you paying your mortgage and your groceries and your rent and all this stuff, you're going to deposit that money into your IUL policy. You're going to put that money into your cash value, right? And so now your cash value went up by $5,000. You just got paid $5,000. That cash value just went up by $5,000, okay? And one thing that I love about an IUL, right, is the word I stands for index, right? So it actually mirrors the market. So your money is not invested directly into the market, so it's risk-free. And it actually mirrors the market, meaning that whatever the S&P 500 is doing, right? So let's just say they're doing 9-10%. The carrier is going to match that 9-10% and give you that return on your cash value. So that is how you're going to, one, be earning compound interest, and two, be building wealth efficiently and effectively, right? So you want to pay yourself first, because normally, if you would have paid your rent and the groceries and the utilities and everything like that, you probably would have $1,000 left out of that $5,000 paycheck. And then you would have only been able to invest that $1,000, right? Or put that 1,000 into your cash value, right? So which one sounds better? For you to deposit the 5,000 and earn compound interest, or for you to deposit the 1,000 and earn compound interest, right? It sounds like the 5,000 is better. And because the 5,000 is better, what's going to happen is at the end of the day, right? So you're earning compound interest off that money that's in your cash value. The beautiful thing is that you can borrow from those funds, right? And so it's not going to actually pull the funds out of your cash value, but you can collateralize it, which means that because at the end of the day, you got to pay your rent. You're not about to get evicted, right? So what is going to happen is you're going to take out a loan against your cash value. So the carrier, right, because they see your policy as an asset, they're going to look and they're going to be like, yes, John has $5,000 in cash value. So we're going to issue him this loan, right? And so you need a little bit of cushion inside of your cash value, right? So they're going to issue you a loan for, let's just say, $4,700, right? So now they're going to direct deposit ACH payment $4,700 back into your bank account. So you went and made a premium payment for $5,000, then you turned around and asked the insurance company for a loan, right, to borrow against the $5,000. They direct deposit $4,700 back into your account, and now you're able to pay your mortgage, your utility bills, your gas, groceries, and everything else you need to pay, right? But your $5,000 is still in your cash value, earning compound interest, earning that 9–10%, mirroring the market. So that is how you're going to build wealth. That is how you want to utilize this type of policy, right? And the beautiful thing about it all is that your trust is going to do this, because your trust is going to be the owner of the policy. Your trust is going to be the payer paying the premiums, and your trust is going to be the beneficiary of the policy, right? And I'll talk about that in just a moment, right? So that is the process that you want to take, and that is the asset that you want to be the first asset inside of your trust. The second asset that I recommend is real estate, right? So you need a liquid asset. You also need a tangible asset, you guys, something that you could touch and feel. So with real estate, right, one thing is that you can get a debt service ratio loan. This is an investment loan, right? And so your trust can actually buy property, right? So your trust can buy real estate. It has to qualify for this loan. So what's going to happen? Well, it's going to have to be able to prove income. And so you're going to provide bank statements in order for that trust to qualify for that mortgage. So with that type of mortgage, right, what you have to do is you have to, they're going to give you 80%. You have to come up with 20%. How are you going to come up with the 20% for the down payment for the real piece of real estate that you're purchasing under the name of the trust? OPM, right? So we're going back to the second pillar, right? So you have leveraged business credit. You went and built business credit off of your EIN for your business trust. You went and, let's just say that they gave you 2 credit cards, $25,000 each, that's $50,000. You went and stripped those credit cards. And now what are you going to do, right? You just stripped those credit cards. So you have $50,000 in liquid cash. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to funnel that money into your IUL policy. So that money, that $50,000 is going to go into your cash value. Your cash value is going to go up by $50,000, and you're going to be building compound interest off of that $50,000. You're going to contact the carrier in order to borrow against your cash value. They're going to give you the $50,000, and then you're going to use it as a down payment for real estate. So that $50,000, you have it working inside of your policy, making 9–10%. And now you've used it as a down payment for real estate. And now that $50,000 is cash flowing. So that cash flow is going to go straight into your policy. I'm telling you, you're building wealth. And then you're going to borrow it out. You're going to pay back the credit card, pay the mortgage. This is the position that you want to put the trust in, to where it's self-sustaining and it's able to actually generate operating funds, and it's actually able to generate the income for you and your family, right? Because I know that you're building generational wealth, but like, you have to put yourself in this type of position to where it's passive and it's able to actually last generations. Okay, so we are let's go to the next slide, okay? So how to actually transfer this wealth, because a lot of us, we don't think about this, right? We are so focused on actually acquiring the assets. You have the house already. You have the car already. You got the money in the bank already, right? But we never think about, one, how we're going to protect the assets, and we never think about how we're going to transfer the assets, and we never think about how we're going to preserve the assets, right? So you need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. I'm going to say that again. You need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. That is the definition of stewardship, right? Which is what you want to do. You want to be a good steward of your wealth versus ownership, which is what you're doing right now. Ownership is where you're so proud to be the owner of that property. So you're all over the public records, and anybody and everybody can snatch that property away from you, especially the government, right? Especially your county. They are just ready to auction off your property at the county's at the county's courtroom, right? You don't want that to happen. So what you want to do is you want to be a good steward, right? Because that house that's in your personal name, that house is going to outlive you. If you don't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there. So instead of you being the owner of that house, what you want is to be the controller of that house so that you actually control that house while you're living. And the way that you're going to do that is through stewardship, because that house is going to be owned in the name of the trust. You're going to be the trustee controlling the trust, controlling the house. That is what own nothing but control everything is, right? So we're talking about transferring wealth. We just spoke about stewardship. Let's move on to TCUs, which is trust certificate units, you guys. All right. So a lot of us, we've heard of, stocks, right? So TCUs are just like stock certificates. You know how stock certificates represent ownership in a corporation, like a publicly traded company? Well, a TCU represents beneficial interest in a trust, right? So the TCUs are actually going to be held by your beneficiaries. And so they're going to represent what their ownership interest is, okay? So for the trust is going to create 100 TCUs, right? And that's going to represent 100% of beneficial interest. So let's just say that you have 5 beneficiaries, right? So you're going to distribute 20 TCUs to each beneficiary. Well, at that point, that means that each of those beneficiaries have 20% beneficial interest inside of the trust, right? So let's just say that the trust is terminated, right? Let's just say when you set up the trust, you said that you wanted to operate for 100 years. The 100 years is up. Now it's expired, right? One thing's for sure is that you have to renew that trust if you want it to actually last generations and generations and generations. Okay, so that's one thing. 2, if that trust expires, then what happens is because the trust expires, it died. It doesn't exist anymore. So that means that the trustee has to take all of the assets and distribute them to the beneficiaries. So if I have 20 TCUs and the trust is worth $1 million, that means that now I'm going to get a transfer of $200,000. So that's what that is, okay? So that is part of you actually transferring wealth. Let's move on to preservation, okay? Preservation is where that generation in the word generational wealth, that's where it comes from, because you want the wealth to last generations and generations, right? So we're talking like 10 generations, 15 generations. How many times have we seen famous families, athletes, actors and actresses, right? That their money doesn't even last their generation or the second or third generation. The money is gone. Why? Because they didn't have any preservation tools in place, right? Because they didn't have what we're talking about today. So if you don't protect your wealth, it's going to disappear, okay? You don't want that to happen, especially because you work so hard. Like I see you working hard. So what are the preservation tools? Well, I just mentioned it, right? So there's 2. One is the trust. You definitely need it, right? Because you're not going to be able to preserve nothing in your personal name. The second thing is the life insurance policy. Why? Because with the trust, right? The trust is actually going to put a life insurance policy on every single person associated with the trust. right? So that's you as the trustee, and that's the beneficiaries and the co-trustees, and all of the future beneficiaries, because you guys are considered human assets, right? And so the trust is into asset protection. So because you're a human asset, the trust needs to protect you. Okay. So with that being said, the trust is going to put an insurance policy on you, and the trust is going to be the owner of the policy, the payer of the policy, and the beneficiary of the policy. Why? Because in the event that something happens to you or your co-trustee or a beneficiary, the trust just suffered a loss. The trust needs to be compensated for that loss. So that means that the trust is actually going to receive the death benefit. So your benefit is $2 million. That is going straight to the trust fund. And guess what? That leads to preservation, right? So that's why it's so important for you to be insured, and the beneficiaries and the future benefit, your kids' kids. Why? Because let's just say that there's a baby that's born, right? As soon as that baby is 30 days old, the trust is going to open up a policy under that baby. That baby is going to be the insured. The trust is going to be paying that premium for what we call a trust fund baby. A trust fund baby is a good thing. Sometimes when we hear of it, it has a negative connotation. No, you want to have trust fund babies, right? So now that trust fund baby, let's just say that that trust fund baby now, fast forward, is 18 years old. That trust fund baby is going off to college. That trust fund baby needs a place to live and their first car. So what that beneficiary can do is they can clearly go down to the dealership and get an auto loan, right? So they could pull their credit, they can get into an auto loan paying 10%, and now they have to pay $800 to the dealership. Or what they can do is they can go to the trust and they can request a loan, because trustees and beneficiaries can borrow from the estate. They can also lend to the estate as well, right? So that trust fund baby just went to the trust and asked for a loan for $30,000. And guess what? The trustee, cut a check, right? So the trustee wrote a check, handed it to the trust fund baby, and now the trust fund baby went and bought the car cash, right? And so now, because that was a loan, the trust fund baby, the beneficiary, is now paying $350 to the trust versus $800 to the dealership, right? So that's a part of preservation, because now the trust is actually earning a little bit of interest off of the individuals that are inside of the trust, right? And so with that being said, right, let's just say, fast forward, the trust fund baby decides to default on that loan and says, I'm not paying the trust. I don't want to pay this $350 anymore. Well, what is going to happen is that was actually a risk-free loan, because the money did not come from the trust fund. The money actually came from the trust fund baby's policy. Why? Because the trust took out a policy when that baby was 30 days old and been paying and adding into that cash value. So when that child turned 18 and needed that money, the trustee went inside of the went and contacted the carrier and actually borrowed that $30,000 from that beneficiary's policy. So the carrier cut a check to the trust, and then the trustee cut a check to the beneficiary. And guess what? We know that the loan doesn't need to be paid back. Why? Because it's automatically taken out of the death benefit. So when you're borrowing money because you need to pay your bills, you don't have to worry about paying that money back. So that's what preservation is, right? That is actually how you're going to preserve your wealth. And that was a risk-free loan, right? Because one, the money is taken out of the death benefit. And so once that trust fund baby expires, right? Once that trust fund baby passes away, the trust is going to get the $2 million. And so now the trust is replenished and paid back for that defaulted loan. That is going to ensure, one, that you don't have these beneficiaries that are spendthrifting, right? Causing the wealth to dissipate, and that the money is actually going to last generations and generations. So if you don't have a trust, and if you don't have life insurance policies that are building cash value, you better believe that that money's not going to be preserved. There's no way. There's no way, right? Okay, so we are going to keep moving on, you guys. Let's see here. All right, so these are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do? So that's a really good book teaching you guys about insurance and about trust. The next one is The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2, which teaches you guys about trusteeship, okay? Then the next one is Family Wealth. It teaches you guys how to actually operate a family office. You need to be operating your business, your family like a business, okay? And then the last one is The Complete Book of Trust, which teaches you guys about the different types of trust, okay? So let's work together. I do have a program where I teach you guys how to actually set up these 3 types of trust that I told you guys about, right? So you can either do it yourself, and that is where we have a course. And so there's 42 video modules, and you get to actually download the template for the trust, watch the video training, customize the trust for your family and for your business and for your tax exempt organization. So you actually get lifetime access to it. You get all the ebooks that I just mentioned, plus all the resources that you're going to need in order to operate your trust, okay? So if you need to do a board meeting, we got you. If you need to transfer your house, we got you, right? If you need to open up a bank account, we show you all those things. We provide you with the resources. And then the last thing is a Facebook community, right? So with the Facebook community, we have over 250 trustees actively in that community that have already gone through the entire process that you guys are about to go through. So the actual course is $997. Then the second option is Done With You. So with the Done With You, we actually do it together in a group setting, okay? So I show up on Zoom with you guys. We do it Monday through Friday. So on Monday, we set up the business trust. Tuesday, we set up the private family trust. On Wednesday, we set up the tax exempt ministry trust, and we become ordained ministers. And then on Thursday, we apply for our EINs. We do board meetings. We fill out promissory notes, and we learn about how to establish the business credit for the business trust. And then on Fridays, we actually transfer our assets. So if you have a house, we do the quick claim deed. If you have a car, we actually do the bill of sale. And if you have a business, then we show you how to remove yourself as the owner and replace the business trust. And then we learn about infinite banking. So we learn about infinite banking from Marvin Mitchell, which is one of my partners. He's been a financial advisor for 18 years, you guys. So with that, you actually get, you still get access to the course. So you still get lifetime access to the course, but you also get lifetime access to the workshops. So we do them every single month. The next one is going to be March, the last week of March. So I think it's like the 25th to the 29th, something like that. And so the workshop is $2,500. And then the last option is do it one-on-one, where we do it privately. So it's me and you privately, and you get individualized support. You get all of your trusts set up individually. And it's for, usually people who have, a complex schedule, or they have multiple assets, multiple businesses, things like that. And so the private sessions are $10,000, you guys. So those are the 3 options, and you get to get 20% off for only the people that are on this call, right? So I do I do value you guys, so you guys get 20% off for the next 24 hours. So what I want to do now is I want to show you guys what a trust looks like, and then we could dive into something else. So this is, hold on one second. I got lost. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Boom. Let's see here. Technology. Oh no, hold on. I gotta make this thing. Okay, there we go. All right, guys. So This is what an actual trust looks like. Like I told you, a trust is a contract, okay? So this is one of the templates that you get with the program. So everything that you see in red is what you are going to be customizing, okay? So everything that you see in red is what you want to customize for your family and for your organization. And then this is what the actual course looks like. So like I said, it's 42 video modules. So you're going to start with what a trust entity is, and then you're going to go into setting up the ministry trust, the family trust, the business trust, and then we go into tax strategies and then asset protection. And then the last thing we go into is wealth creation, where you learn about the infinite banking and how to build credit and how to invest in index funds. And then you have the resources and the actual ebooks, you guys. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to pass the mic to my partner, Marvin Mitchell, so that he's able to teach us about infinite banking, you guys, because that is really one of the most important things for you actually building wealth. So you're coming here to learn about how to build generational wealth. So you learning about the trust as well as infinite banking. So Marvin, you have the floor.
Right. How's everybody doing today? All right, hold on one second. Perfect. All right, cool. So I just been on 4 meetings back to back to back, but wanted to come in and give y'all really something quick to extend on what Christina has already talked about. From infinite banking to sort of explain to you the different types of policies that you can have and why does this even work. First off, what is infinite banking? But before I do that, everybody put some fireballs in the comments for Christina for doing an amazing job. This is a free training that she's doing that she has over delivered on for free. So if you believe that, put some fireballs in the chat for Christina. Amazing. Yes, absolutely. Let's give her flowers. Because again, it's not often that somebody's willing to just give away all the information that they can and not charge you anything. So you got to appreciate that when it happens. And as you can see, you are seeing your flowers of people are appreciating you, people are paying attention. So
Thank you,
this is
thank you, thank
amazing.
you. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you guys too.
So great. So what I want to do, you all, I really want to talk to you all about some really quick lessons on life insurance. But when it comes to savings, first thing I got to tell y'all is when you start, is very important, and you want to start as soon as you can. Procrastination is the assassination of your destination. So starting as soon as you can is very important. Here's why. A couple of different reasons. Number one, the longer you wait, the more you're going to have to invest. So whether you are 20, 50, 60, it don't matter. The point is that you need to get started. So here's an example of, we know 25, some of y'all are like, I'm way past that, but let's just say you were 25, you wanted to retire at 65 and your account was earning 7%. If you were investing about 500 a month or 6,000 and nothing ever increased, you just invest 500 a month every single year for that entire time frame, then you would have contributed 240,000, but it would have grown to 1,281,657. If you would have just waited until 10 years until you were 35, now you would have had to get to that same 1,281,657, you would have had to contribute 380,415 in less time. So that's double. You would have had to contribute $12,681 a year to get to that same amount. So that's why the power of compound interest, the best time to start is now. So if you're 60, it's still not too late. If you're 70, I got clients who are 70 years old who are still doing this. So I wanted to make sure I talked about that first. The second thing I want to talk about is a really quick lesson on life insurance so that you can understand why this works. This is called a really quick 10-minute lesson on life insurance. So if I had $500,000, you all, there's a minimum amount that I can put into a policy, and there's a maximum amount that I can put into the policy. Who do you think determines the minimum amount that you can put into a life insurance policy? Put it in the chat. Who do you think determines the minimum amount that you can put into a life insurance policy? Okay. Who do you think? Actually, it is the insurance company, not you. The government is actually, the IRS determines a maximum amount. Why would the government ever be concerned about the maximum amount? Taxes, right? So there are several ways to design a policy. Now the government said, okay, we're tired of millionaires and people with money putting millions of dollars into their policy to avoid taxes. So in the 80s, they designed qualified plans, which is your IRAs, 401ks, SEP, and 403bs, so that they could actually control the taxation of your money. And what they said was, if you put too much money into this, it would turn into a MEC. A MEC is a modified endowment contract. A modified endowment contract means if you don't contribute for at least 5 to 7 years, then they are going to treat it taxable, just like your IRA or 401k, et cetera, right? So you got to understand that these retirement plans on your job were designed to control you. They were designed to keep you from being able to access your funds until you're 59 and a half. They're controlling the taxes, they're controlling the fees, they're not even telling you the fees. Now, with that being said, if they're offering you a match, then contribute to the match. But outside of that, it's not the best thing for you. See, when you put the least amount, try to get the $500 versus the $10,000, well, the $500 is considered to be term. Term, the only benefit is a death benefit, whereas when you overfund the policy and put the extra money in, now you're getting a permanent policy that's also giving you tax-deferred growth, tax-free distributions, competitive returns, high contribution limits, additional benefits, collateral opportunities, which means you can borrow against it, is very safe, no loss provisions, which means you can't lose, guaranteed loan options, which means as long as you have the cash, nobody's checking your credit, nobody's telling you you don't have to apply for it, you can get the loan. It's also unstructured loan payments, which means you don't have to pay it back. If you don't pay it back, it's simply subtracted from your death benefit when you die. And unlike the 401k, you have liquidity, use, and control of your money. Even if you're 30, it doesn't matter. You can access your funds without any 10% penalty, and you can borrow it for collateral opportunities to buy investments, to buy real estate, etc. So the key is to design the policy with the lowest amount of death benefit. Why? Because you want to overfund it, and you want the highest amount of living benefits. So you're not buying this for your death, you're buying this for your life, because you want to borrow against it to pay off debt and also to buy assets. Another thing that's very important to know when you're dealing with these types of policies is that most people have the policy wrong. If you have a death benefit, if you have a high death benefit and it looks like no cash value is building up, it's because they structured it for the highest death benefit. The agents make 70% more commission when this happens. But when you structure for the highest living benefit, you get more cash value to borrow against, you get a lower death benefit, but you pay 70% less fees. So you get all of these benefits, and you also can get an increasing death benefit, which means that as the older that you get, the higher that your death benefit can go. Now, there's a couple different types of policies that I recommend. One, as Christina said, is an index universal life. I like those because they're going to grow more over time. You can use it for income down the line. And it takes a little longer to borrow against it, sometimes 12 months, 13 months. But whole life, you're going to get a lower interest rate, but you can borrow from it quicker. So what is the best one to get? It doesn't matter. It really depends on what your goals are. But it doesn't have to be an either or either. It can be a both and. You can get both. I have both. It just depends on your situation. Now, these work really, really well with trust because, again, as Christina has said, you can make the trust the owner and a beneficiary. You can create a life insurance retirement plan, which means that none of that money will be taxable or debt. It can go to the irrevocable life insurance trust, and you can do whatever you need to do with that particular money. That's why life insurance should be your first asset. I've been able to borrow against my policy to pay off debt. I've been able to borrow against my policies to buy luxury vehicles, to buy a nice house. I've been able to borrow against my policy to get a Lamborghini. I borrowed from my policy to loan people money, and I wrote their real estate off as collateral. So I became the bank to that particular person. I borrowed from my policy to buy stocks, to buy options, and I made money on options. So many different things that I borrowed from my policy from. More recently, I've actually borrowed from my policy to pay taxes. Why? Because the money continues to grow as if you never touched it. That is the benefit. So if you're a wealth creator, you want to be able to borrow from your policy while it continues to grow. So again, I just had a short spiel today, not a long talk today, because of the fact that Christina did such a wonderful job explaining it. But we do a lot of events together. She's doing a 5-day event for people who get the trust, and I'm going to participate in that event, and I'm going to be given a day worth of game on this. So not only are you getting information about the trust, you're learning about how to get the tax-free assets included. So what she's offering right now, you all, is a steal. I'm telling you, it costs $30,000 to $40,000 to get all three of these trusts that she's essentially allowing you to get at a fraction of the cost, $2,500. That's like less than a tenth of the cost to get all three of these trusts done. I challenge you to try to find something like this anywhere. It doesn't exist. So what she's doing is God's work, like literally. People who can't afford it, she's really helping you to have all of this done, and you know you need to get it done anyway. So what are you procrastinating on? Right? There's nothing to procrastinate on. Um, it can be stored in the trust name or the physical individual name. You could do it in either one. Sometimes it's better to do it in the trust name. However, if you do it in your individual name, if you already have it in your individual name, it can always be switched over to the trust name as well. So there's it can work either way. So with that being said, you all, here's what I want to do. If you'll drop the link to insurancetrustcall.com, that way we know that you all came from Christina. If we drop that link, and what I'm willing to do is waive our $497 fee and do a complimentary conversation with you all with my team. All you have to do is click on that link, insurancetrustcall.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to meet with you and help you to actually structure and set up your own bank. I got 18 years in the industry. I got a team of 13 people that are ready to help you, ready to explain this to you, and ready to get you set up and get you going. And we're going to work hand in hand with Christina to make sure that we're setting you up in a way that you could transition or start off with a trust very seamlessly. So very powerful thing to do. So with that being said, definitely appreciate you all. You all have listened to one of the GOAT's presentations today when it comes to trust, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. So with that being said, Christina, it is back over to you.
Thank you, Marvin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the floor for questions. So if you have any questions for me, or if you have any insurance questions for Marvin, you can go ahead and raise your hand. So we only have probably like 10 minutes for Q&A, and then we're going to wrap it up because we've been here for a while. I do want to say that I did put the link to the website. So if you guys want to go to wealthytrustee.com, you can, and enroll. You do get 20% off in the next 24 hours. You do have to use the discount code TRUST20. And if you don't have the entire 20%, then what you want to do is you want to put a deposit. So the deposit is only $200. And I do have the code, I mean, not the code, but the link for the deposit in the chat as well. So I'll put it again, because I see that some people had just jumped in. And then if you have any questions, go ahead, right? Go ahead. And if you guys want the replay, I did see somebody say something about a replay. So the replay is going to be on YouTube. So you can go to our YouTube channel. The link is also in the chat, but our YouTube channel is 7 Ways to Wealth on YouTube. And so you can watch the entire webinar again on YouTube. So do I have any questions? Anybody have any questions for me? Anybody have any questions for Marvin? All right, so Quantrell said, I came in a little late. What's a safe amount of money to start with? So is that to like start with what? Start your trust, start your policy?
If you're talking about your policy, I think the question would be, what's the most that you can do, because it's really helping you to, you have access to that money that you can borrow against to buy other things. With a policy, you can start, I mean, you can start with as low as 250 a month, 500 a month. Obviously, if you could do more, it's better, but this is not just for wealthy individuals. A lot of people have this confused, thinking that only wealthy people could do this, but a lot of people have started this to become wealthy. So, and if you're not wealthy, you probably really need life insurance anyway. Why? Because one of the secrets to growth and success is to buy wealth while you're waiting to create it. So, I definitely would do a consultation to figure out. We're going to help you to figure out, based on your own personal situation, what is a safe amount for you individually, because everybody's different.
Perfect. Thank you. So next we have Deborah. Hey, Deborah, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Good. Couple of things. You said it was a 501 or 508 what? I didn't get that down.
Okay, the letters and numbers after 508 is C1A.
C18. Okay, I'll look that up.
Yeah, A is an apple.
Oh, A is an apple. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Also, I actually have this sort of set up, but it's through a person who just got indicted, and don't feel comfortable using them yet. Is there some way to take a look at them, or should I just start over again?
So I don't mind doing an audit of your existing structure. So if you want to book a consultation, you can. So you can just respond to the text message, and then you could book a consultation. I'll be able to audit whatever you have that's existing now.
Okay, and is that the one that says insurance trust strategy call?
So that's to book a call with Marvin's team in order for you to set up your policy. So there's another link to book a call with me. So I'll put it in the chat now, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, next. Is there anybody else that has a question? Let me check the chat.
I'm trying to learn how to put my hand up on my phone. I'm sorry to interrupt, but my name is Lisa. I think I've talked to you before, but is it okay? How do I put my hand up? Because I don't want to jump in front of anybody else.
Oh, it's okay. I don't see anybody else have their hand up, so you can go ahead, Lisa. And then I think there's something on the bottom where it says like reactions or something like that.
Oh, I see it now. Okay. Thank you. I have a trust actually. It's a spendthrift irrevocable trust, and like her, you're probably gonna have to look at it, but I haven't used it, and I've had it for what, 2 years now, and it's an irrevocable one. So I have a trust, and I also have Lincoln the life insurance, but I know that you have to wait to take your money out. I know that, so I probably need to book a call with Marvin too on that one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So, book a call with Marvin's team, and they'll be able to, also take a look at your policy to see if it's structured right, because not every single policy is structured correctly. So, with that being said, if it's structured incorrectly, then you might have to wait over a decade. I've heard of people having to wait 18, 20 years in order to borrow cash value. So, that's why it's so important, like what he said, how it's structured.
Okay.
Yeah. And then as far as your trust, right? So you have the spendthrift irrevocable trust. And so what's the reason why you haven't used it?
Because I bought this trust maybe almost 2.5 years ago, and I really haven't maneuvered with it, but it's a family trust. It's an irrevocable trust, but I hear it can do so many different things, and I just don't know how to move with it. So that's one of the reasons I want to get with you to see
Yeah,
if
I
it's
was trying to pull that information out of you. So you don't know how to operate the trust, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the most important thing, and that's what sets my program apart is that I actually teach you guys how to operate the trust because you feel disempowered because the trust is so powerful, but you don't know how to use it, right? People don't know how to open up a bank account. They don't know how to transfer their assets. They don't know how to do infinite banking. There's so many things. And so that's what you guys are going to learn in my program. It's not about, oh, setting up a trust. It's actually about trusteeship and actually how to actually operate and use it and build wealth effectively with it. So I'm excited to talk to you offline, Lisa. I'm going to move on to the next person.
Thank you.
You're welcome. God bless you. So next is, oh, I can't pronounce this name. Is it for free? Is it free? Am I saying?
Yeah, it's free.
Okay, I'm saying it right. Okay, what's up? How are you?
How you doing? How you doing?
Great.
So what law does the trust operate under?
Oh, common law jurisdiction. So, I mean, every single trust is different. So, if you're talking about the type of trust that we expose you to is under common law.
Okay. So that does that have anything dealing with like codes and statutes? Not.
Correct. It's the total opposite. It doesn't have anything to do with any
So this is
statutory
more
law,
like
with no codes, no.
equity.
Right. You're right.
Okay. Cool. Uh, that that's basically what I had wanted to ask you. Let me see.
Okay.
I'll come back to you if nobody else ain't got another question. I'm looking at something. I
All
was
right.
taking notes.
Sounds good. Thank you for being here. All right, so I see a question in the chat from Tony. He said, my dad is 81. He's in a living facility as a veteran. You're his power of attorney. So can I set up something like this for him? Absolutely, because you're his power of attorney, you're able to sign as, an authorized representative for him. So if you wanted to set up a trust for him, you could actually do that as his power of attorney. And that would definitely be a good idea, especially if your father has assets, right? You want to do it while he's still living. The next question is, can the trust be established through a credit union or it must be through a bank? No, you could actually create, so the whatever account that you're going to use is a trust fund, right? And so it could be a checking account, it could be a savings account, and that could either be through a bank or a credit union. And then you could also get brokerage accounts as well, right? So you can get like a cash management account or a brokerage account. With different brokerages like Charles Schwab or Fidelity, things like that. So all of those can constitute as your trust fund. It's not only like a checking or anything like that. Next is trying to understand holding company. All right, Reggie. So with the holding company, and I teach you guys this step by step in the workshop and in the course, okay? So with the holding company, you have to understand that an entity can own another entity, okay? So an entity can be used to hold assets as well. So your company, right, your LLC or your corporation is an asset, okay? That's how you have to look at it. It's an asset, it's a business, right? And so the holding company can own that asset, right? So instead of you being the owner of the instead of you being the owner of the company, you want to remove yourself as the owner of the company, because if the company gets sued, they're going to go after you as the owner. A lot of people don't think about that. We're out here running businesses and we literally have no protection because they can come after us. And if they come after us, that means that they can take our house, our car, the money in our bank, all kinds of stuff. Okay. So you don't want that to happen. And so you actually want a first layer of protection to protect you between your company, right? So that if the company gets sued, they're going to go after the trust. The trust is going to be the holding company for your LLC or corporation, okay? So that's just a little snippet. You will have to get into the program in order to actually set this up, okay? So Reggie said, thanks a million. And then I have two more questions and then we're going to wrap it up, guys. So the next question, and if you guys could come off mute and ask the question, that would be great. But if not, then I'll read it from the chat if you're not available. So, this question is from Marvin. It says, can I set up a life insurance policy in the name of the trust with my parents as the beneficiaries? They have pre-existing conditions and many times they are unable to, I guess, be insured, looking for guidance here.
Okay, so if you set up the policy in the name of the trust, even if your parents are beneficiary, you got to understand what that means. Your parents being beneficiaries means that if you die, the money goes to them, not if they die. So it has nothing to do with them being insured, so to speak. Now, um, depending on how you wrote out the trust, I mean, you could put the owner as a trust, and I would still put the trust as the beneficiary, and then you write out inside of the trust however you want it to be. So I guess the answer to your question is, could they be done like that? Yes, but I'm saying it probably shouldn't be done like that. Just you putting the parents as a beneficiary, because I'm really hoping that you outlive them. Okay.
Yes. So instead of them being the beneficiary of the insurance policy, they should be the beneficiary of the trust that owns the insurance policy. That's the best way for you to structure it. All right, next question is, I'm a truck driver. I currently saving money, and staying in the truck. Do you need an address? So you can actually get a virtual address. So if you don't have a physical address, don't worry about that. You can actually get a virtual address. They're like $5 a month. And then you can use that address, for everything that you want to set up. So if you want to set up the trust, you can use it for the trust address. If you want to set up the policy, you could use it for that. So let me ask Marvin. Marvin, is it okay for them to use a virtual address, or do they need like a physical location of where they live
To set up what? I'm sorry.
to set up the policy? So,
No, you can use a virtual address.
okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, people move all the time anyway.
Okay.
So
All right, cool. The next one, is it wise to establish a management company along with the holding company? If you want to, it just depends on the type of business that you are operating. If you're operating a a high risk business, then yes. Like if I always talk about like trucking and real estate and stuff like that. So it makes sense for those types of businesses. I have two properties and in process of deed being transferred from the name to an LLC. Should I have both properties with its own LLC or them both listed under one LLC? So it's optional, it's up to you. So just think about it, right? So if the LLC is sued and then they could potentially take both properties, do you want them to do that? Right? If LLCA is being sued and both of those properties are under LLCA, then both are up for grabs. But if LLCA is sued and you only have one property and then the other property is owned by LLCB, then just because LLCA is sued, LLCB and that property is protected, right? They can't come after it. It's the 20% off for the $9.97 package. Yes, so it is. So the 20% off is for all the packages. So if you want to do the course, if you want to do done with you, or if you want to do it one-on-one, you get 20% off for the next 24 hours, you guys. So until tomorrow at midnight, and just use the discount code TRUST20. And if you want to secure that 20% discount, so if you're not able to pay in full right now, then you do want to use that that deposit link that I have in the chat, okay? So that link is only available in this chat or in this Zoom call. So go ahead and copy it and paste it somewhere else if you know that you want to put a deposit within the next 24 hours, okay? And I tell you, the next workshop, if you guys want to do the workshop, is the last week of March. So let me check those dates. It is March 25th to the 29th, and the time is 11 in the morning to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we go 5 days. So you literally get your trust set up in 5 days, okay, guys? And we hold you accountable like in the program. So let me see, $5 a month. I never seen that low cost for an address. Yeah, I've seen it. So I've seen $5, I've seen $7. So I've used iPostal, I've used physicaladdress.com. It depends on the location as well, so I'm not sure where you are. So anyways, that is it, you guys. So thank you so much for attending this webinar. Thank you so much for participating, and I will see you guys. So definitely book a call with Marvin's team if you guys are interested in getting the life insurance, and then also go to wealthytrusty.com so that you can find out more about the trust program so that you can learn how to build generational wealth the right way, because you guys are generational curse breakers. It's time to change the trajectory of your family, of your children's children. Now you're actually going to be raising your children to be, to one, be, trust fund kids, but also to be trustees, right? They're going to be successors. So you're going to actually pass the baton, and the wealth is going to last many generations. So it's time to break these curses and change the trajectory of our family. So you guys have a blessed night, and I hope that you take action on the information that me and Marvin shared today. Good night, everybody.
Ask one more question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Um, is it a good idea to register your name
That's
as a as an LLC, like before the trust or after the trust?
So with the trust, you're going to be operating privately. So it doesn't matter if you do it before or after. So one, that's optional if you want to register your name as a LLC. And then two, it doesn't matter in what order you do it. So you could set up your trust and then register the name, or you could register your name first and then set up the trust. So it's really up to you. All right, guys, have